the beauty of doing organic content when it's working is that once you make that investment and you've proven that it turns from a visitor to revenue, however you prove that as a business, that revenue will go for a long time, even if you leave it alone. And so it becomes this nice moat. Like Scribe, I left. You can have Lauren Lead never publish another thing, and this will continue to make tens of thousands of dollars every month, and it's already broken even. So it's just printing money at this point.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Beyond Traffic podcast. I'm your host, Shehu Abdulgani. Today, Jakub Rudnik is joining me on the show. Jakub is the Director of Content Marketing at ActiveCampaign. In his previous role as Head of Content at Scribe, he grew the organic traffic from 3,000 to 100,000 and blog traffic from 0 to 40,000 in 8 months. Before joining Scribe, he was the head of content marketing at G2, leading a team of 22 content creators and growing the blog traffic from 50,000 to 1.5 million in just over a year. So I'm excited to have Jakub on this episode of the Beyond Traffic podcast. So I welcome you once again to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for that really nice intro. Yeah, that kind of sums up my content and SEO experience in a nutshell. And I've been here at ActiveCampaign for a month, so this is pretty new, but definitely can share on these other experiences and then what we're thinking of doing, in the future here at ActiveCampaign.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate you for your time. So before we dive in, I would like you to tell me more about your background and then specifically how you got into SEO.
Definitely. I am a former, I guess, sometimes journalist, but I got a journalism master's degree about a decade ago and had strong writing skills, was a storyteller, did a lot of sports journalism, worked in radio, TV, wrote for the Tribune sometimes. I was working until 1 a.m. I was working nights and weekends, and I was making no money doing it basically. And so I ended up taking a job over at G2 Crowd at the time. It's been shortened to G2, but it's just a content specialist role. And I really didn't know much more than startups seem fun. There's a keg of beer in the fridge. I didn't know much more other than my lifestyle would be a little bit easier and I could still freelance on the side. And I spent 4.5 years there, and my role evolved from someone who showed up and kind of did some content, some blog writing, some email marketing, whatever else, to finding a role and then taking on a little bit more. And there's a longer story here, but basically there's a vacuum at a certain inflection point in the company where SEO manager had left, content director had left, and we were starting to fall behind competitors on organic traffic. G2 had just grown forever because we were adding new categories, products, reviews, et cetera. And we had kind of slowed down. We weren't doing content marketing as I think your average listener will think of it. We weren't doing it that way. We were creating all the content, but it wasn't doing anything organically. And so it was kind of tasked me and one other person with cracking this kind of code for G2. So I don't know, dove right in, got access to an Ahrefs account, started reverse engineering what our competitors and others in the space were doing, started running the kind of blog cluster strategy that most people are very familiar with and really experimenting and kind of trying to move and learn as fast as possible. And that's where that story of 50,000 to 1.5 million comes in. And from there, we showed success. They hired a CMO from HubSpot who, wanted to run that exact same playbook. So he took the two of us over and to his team. We built out a bigger team, and kind of the rest is history. I've been running content teams, SEO teams ever since. So it was definitely trial and error. It wasn't something I knew that much about. I took one class that mentioned SEO in grad school as a journalist. So I basically knew nothing 10 years ago about SEO. Honestly, could I have even told you what it meant? Not really. And so it's been definitely a learning while doing type of experience for me.
Well, I really appreciate you for sharing an insight into your background. And I could see that with what you've shared, it just shows that your career trajectory can actually evolve over time. As you mentioned, you were previously a journalist and you started working at G2 as a content specialist and grew from there to becoming the head of content marketing. And since then, you've done other stuff for other SaaS startups as well. So that brings me to the next question about ActiveCampaign. So you recently joined ActiveCampaign as the director of content marketing. So I would like to know, for someone listening to this episode and don't know about ActiveCampaign, can you briefly talk about what the software does, the core features, and who will find it most helpful?
Yeah, so I think a lot of marketers and content folks will know ActiveCampaign for its marketing automation, email marketing functionality. We think of us like we fit into those categories if you look at G2, but we think of ourselves as this customer experience automation platform. So automating any experience with a customer, but not just automation for that sake, but automation to make every interaction with a customer feel personalized through different tagging fields and things on the back end that make, when you come into my website and take different paths, different interactions with different pieces of content or whatever else, I can get really hyper focused on what message I'm sending to you at what time, right? So really aligning all of the context and messaging across the customer journey that you would take with, my tool or my website, my products. And then again, this hyper personalization. We're kind of in the middle of relaunching to not just one platform, but focus platforms for that marketing automation email side and then CRM, and then also in the process of launching a e-commerce tool. So kind of giving a little bit of more of a choose your own adventure for customers who might just need our sales platform to move, to build a pipeline, or other people who will need just the email type of functionality on our tools. And then people of all sorts of sizes, businesses, like truly solopreneurs up to enterprise businesses use ActiveCampaign. However, we see a ton of traction in the one person to small businesses who don't have a ton of time and want to do a lot more with less. And so this idea of automating everything, you can't spend all day manually writing emails to people. And so setting up these different workflows and letting them run themselves we've seen a ton of traction. We've got some great customers in that really small side. But one of the reasons I think that they also use ActiveCampaign is they can go from a 1-person company to a 50-person company and beyond, and ActiveCampaign will scale with them. So we have the functionality of a much bigger tool, but we have that ease of use and scalability of something for small business. So we don't think of ourselves as like a small business CRM or small business email marketing platform. We actually see a lot of people go from a MailChimp to an ActiveCampaign. However, it can work on both ends of both really big companies and small as well.
Thank you very much for sharing that about ActiveCampaign. So as you mentioned, like it's a tool that most marketers, internet marketers will know about, and especially if you've done email marketing before. So you've probably heard about ActiveCampaign. And based on what you said, I think the company has now moved beyond just email marketing. So there are other things as well that it does for its customers. So moving forward, I would like us to change gears a bit. So Scribe was the previous company that you worked at, and the company seemed to me like a startup that invested early in SEO for a long period of time. So I would like to know, why did Scribe decided to go all in with SEO from day one?
Yeah, so Scribe, the brief elevator pitch it's a Chrome extension and also a desktop app that automates the process of documentation for anything that's a step-by-step guide. So if you're going to create a standard operating procedure or even just show a coworker how to do something and you find yourself writing steps or taking screenshots, marking screenshots up, putting those little arrows on, instead you can just download Scribe as the Chrome extension, hit start recording, do the thing that you want to show somebody, say, this is how you download all your backlinks from Ahrefs. You do that process, you hit stop recording, and Scribe spits out a brand new URL for you. And we use AI to write the title, write all the steps. It takes all those screenshots and inserts them marked up into the document. And then of course, like you can modify steps, add different tips or different pieces of information, but it creates all those steps for you. And then it's something that's this living document that you can update over time. I still teach journalism classes, which we didn't talk about, but I use Scribe to show my students how to set up WordPress or create a Google map or something. And I can use those documents over and over and over for every one of my classes. And if something is outdated, I just simply tweak it. And everyone who has access to that link can then will now see an updated version of that document. So there's more to it, but that's the gist of the core product. And so for Scribe, the reason to jump into SEO and content early in part is because the tool itself is an SEO driver for Scribe. So each one of those documents, like you can definitely set it private. We understand people have private information and, billing, whatever else. Like there's stuff that needs to be hidden. At the same time, people can use the tool. Like we have had a lot of content marketers use the tool and embed guides in their product related content, or even in top of funnel stuff, but they're showing how to use their tool to solve that solution. And so those guides, they're optimized for SEO. We have H2s for all the different steps. The first header, it includes the software tool and stuff. And so we know that our users may want their guides to be public. It can help them build brand authority or whatever else. We also had a lot of solopreneurs or small like consulting businesses use the tool. So it helps you be found. But for Scribe, we also leveraged it as really product led growth. So we could create all these guides on how to do things in Google Sheets or popular tools like that, optimize them for SEO, and see hundreds, thousands of people come in every month, and a few percentage of those people converting to free users because they were seeing this tool. What is this? Let me try this thing out for free. And so we were using those both as a brand awareness play, but also turning real visitors into users. So that's why they invested early, I believe. At the same time, I think there was people advising our CEO and head of marketing that content was a thing that was needed. And beyond that, there was belief that this was a tool that would convert really nicely. This freemium, we have a free model and then pro version and then enterprise. And so a tool like that's almost like a B2C tool, could really convert well with someone with the right knowledge, could target the right keywords to bring people in. And so that's what we did as well, is not just use the tool to create SEO driven content, but also a lot of content you'll see how to write SOPs, software for writing standard operating procedures or process documentation or whatever else. Scribe sits in between a bunch of like traditional categories. It does a lot of the things of standard operating procedures software. It does some of the things of product documentation software. It does some of the stuff of customer success software. So it is carving out this new space as a knowledge sharing tool there, but beyond, it does a few different things. So it's kind of in this new category. And so what worked really well for us is grabbing the pieces of all those existing categories and then showing people, here's the solution you thought you were looking for, but actually there's this thing that you've never heard of that we can show you how to solve your current problem. And so really a lot of people have problems of creating documents faster, scale, updating them, whatever else. And so we could write about those problems and then show them Scribe as a brand new solution. So I think that's the long of the why, but hopefully that gives you kind of an insight into that early strategy and why a Series A company invested so heavily in content right from the get-go.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that about Scribe. And it's interesting to know that with a Chrome extension, you can easily turn video into a step-by-step guide that you can send to your employees, teammates, VAs, so on. So you mentioned quite a lot of things here about why Scribe decided to delve into SEO from day one. So the first thing is the tool is an SEO driver itself. And you also mentioned that the company also leverages product-led growth. And then you also mentioned something about the freemium pricing model. So I would like to know, when it comes to startups that want to invest in SEO, are these some of the things they need to think about before deciding if SEO is something they should go all in with from day one? Or do you think that startups can just decide to go all in with SEO from day one?
I don't think every company should invest in SEO from, seed level, Series A, whatever else. I often see companies that believe in this. They'll listen to a podcast like this, right? They'll hear something. I get founders that come into my DMs, a couple times a month and ask questions, and they either don't have the resourcing for it, right? They don't have somebody dedicated. So it's like a founder trying to write one blog a month, and it's a matter of the velocity and the output. Like, is somebody doing it, dedicating enough time? The other side is like, is there someone doing it well? You can hire a content marketer, but if they haven't run this kind of playbook, if they don't know, but it's very easy to do almost enough to rank something for SEO, but just fall flat, right? Lots of like blogs, every SaaS blog kind of looks the same, but there's a lot of micro details that make the difference between page 2 and page 1, or even targeting the right keywords, or even knowing what keywords will convert into real signups, revenue, whatever else. And so if you don't have that experience in-house, I think that's why Scribe invested in someone like me with more experience rather than just kind of a generalist who would write blogs and they might fall flat. So I see that a lot, not having that in-house expertise. Sometimes I'll see people hire agencies, which can work, but you're paying that premium. And if they don't know the business well enough, Scribe hired an agency before hiring me. And a few of those blogs ranked for things, but they were just never converted. They weren't the right keywords, right, for the business. So it's kind of like putting the horse before the cart. Other things, just like what category are you in? Is there existing demand? So for Scribe, again, we were in this sweet spot where there wasn't true competitors and definitely not content competitors. So we were kind of competing in screenshot tools and SOP tools and all these, but there was some nice space where there's really low difficulty terms because there wasn't a true category. Nobody was solving for that problem. So they weren't writing about it. And at the same time, there was existing volume because people did have this issue. And so we had this really nice place where tons of 500 estimated traffic, 20 difficulty keywords. So a newer domain could grab that space and they converted really nicely. However, if I was a brand new marketing automation tool and trying to compete against HubSpot and ActiveCampaign and all these big, like scary monsters of SEO, would I come in and do this exact play? Probably not, right? You would need to find another way to wedge yourself into the market. And so as a new category, we could do a lot of like what people would think of as demand capture, an SEO play, and it actually turns into demand creation because people had never heard of the tool before. And if you're not so differentiated, you'll need to find another way in. And so I think that's where a lot of folks will try to fight SEO battles that they're not prepared for. Again, either they don't have the expertise, they don't have the resources, or they're in an incredibly difficult market. Yeah, I think that those are some of the big pieces. There's some other things as well. One thing with Scribe too that really helped us is that people would embed or link to individual scribes from their FAQ pages or other domains. So we were getting a ton of natural link building without having to do anything. So I came in and our domain was already a 32, which isn't like mind blowing, but it's definitely better than a lot of startups that come and talk to me. And we built it to a 72 over the course of a year. And some of that was manual link building, but a lot of that would have happened naturally just from our customers getting value out of the product. So if you have something like that you can leverage into organic SEO growth, again, Scribe was just this really sweet spot of a tool that helped build links and helped generate traffic itself, a tool that was in its own category and not a ton of competitors.
Thank you very much for sharing that. So, one thing I would like you to maybe talk a little bit more about is you mentioned that depending on the software that you are working with, that will determine if you should go all in with SEO from day one or not. So, let's say, for instance, a software that is in a new category, okay, maybe not like Scribe, because you mentioned that Scribe also had some other competitors, though not direct. So, how should a software in a new category approach SEO compared to a software that is in a category that is already in high demand? How do you think they should approach you differently?
Yeah. So if you're in, newer competitor into, let's say a marketing automation, because that's what I'm thinking about right now, you either need to find that thing that differentiates you. You should be doing this anyway. If there's some demand around that feature or that persona or whatever it is, you really just will have to hammer this. And where, say HubSpot will own marketing automation software, you shouldn't write that pillar page right away. Like that's not going to rank for your first year, two, ever. Like you may never win that because there's just hundreds, thousands of backlinks already built to the big competitors. And so you need to really start down the funnel, these really long tail versions of those keywords, like higher up, or again, those little places where you can differentiate yourself, right? What's the new feature set or what do you integrate with, right? You can kind of like use the tailwinds of other companies, depending on what your tool is, to wedge in. If you're a brand new tool or a brand new category, again, kind of the Scribe example, what I'd be looking for is really those problems that you're solving. Like, you should do the problem stuff on the other side too. But with marketing automation, those problems they're oversaturated as well, right? Your competitors have done this. But if you're in a new category, you'll probably find a lot less competition in kind of this intersection spot, right? For Scribe, it was how to take screenshots. And like there aren't that many tools that need to cover this, or how to write this type of documentation. So like for instance, how to write work instructions. No, there's no tools really for this. There's only a few. So we had people were asking how to do this, but there was no solution. So it was like kind of an underdeveloped market. And so we could go find those places. What are our use cases or what are our functionality? What problems are we solving for a customer that don't align to traditional categories? And then we can show that. So we found some sweet spots in there. And again, really problem-based stuff. People don't know your tool exists. No one was saying, I need knowledge sharing software. Nobody was saying that. And so what we needed to do was go find people that could use Scribe and their life would be better if they just heard about it. And so we go look for their problems and then show Scribe as the example. I think one piece maybe that you didn't ask, but that's really helpful there is like, you still have to understand their problem and really empathize, kind of like you would do with their content. But then the true, where we saw a ton of value on conversion side. So you have to like identify their pain and how it connects to Scribe early on and lead them through this journey on each blog post or whatever piece of content it was towards Scribe being the answer. Probably obvious stuff for a lot of your listeners, but that was really impactful is writing, like not introducing Scribe too early, but after we've identified their pain and we really like made people feel like we know them. And right at the end, here's this magical tool that saves them 20 hours a week. Like we were getting downloads instantly. And so that's the sweet spot is find those pieces of pain that people have just been dealing with in their work life or whatever it is and show them your solution right at the right time in that blog post.
I really appreciate you for sharing that strategy of the pain points of your target audience, probably the questions that they are asking, and writing blog posts related to those pain points, and then selling your solution towards the end of it, especially if you are just starting when there is no demand for what your software is about. So now let's delve into the SEO playbook that you use at Scribe. So I would like to know when you started doing SEO at Scribe, what was your approach like?
So I basically started in December 2021 and had this, wanted to run this blog type of playbook. And it took a little bit longer than I wanted to get off the ground. Frankly, it's like one of these learnings for me is you don't need perfection on day one. You need something to work and you need to move the needle. This SEO content, but anything is going to take some time to get off the ground, get right, whatever. And so we just needed to start publishing a little bit faster. And so longer story there, but ultimately we get to end of April and we haven't published anything yet. So I've been there for 4 months, so we're not seeing any results. I figured out how to get a ton of freelance writers. We actually were getting content written that was pretty good. It just needed a little bit of work and then setting up the right CMS and all this stuff. And so ultimately we had 40 or 50 pieces and we just weren't moving. So this kind of changed my strategy on SEO, just like my belief in it. Okay, get pushed by the CEO. Why does every piece need this many steps of editing? Why does it need all of this work? You just publish it today and get that clock going. And so I kind of radically started publishing very quickly. Me and Lauren, who was our content manager over there, and it was great, but two of us publishing 40 or 50 pieces in April, 40 or 50 pieces in May, another 20, 30 pieces, and doing lighter edits, moving faster, making sure the technical stuff is all correct. Interlinking is right, making sure we're using Search Console to get things indexed really quickly. And then, within a few weeks, Google was doing it on its own, kind of jump starting over there. And so this gave us like in May and June, very little traffic, but suddenly we go from 1,000 visitors in June to 10,000 in July. And then we can start to see things grow exponentially from there. So we really batched this content and published quickly, kind of made it very assembly line, right? Like we publish the content early in the month, then we'd come in and start optimizing. I'd spend time building links the rest of the month and we'd edit over time as we started to see some pieces of content rank. We'd give them that extra attention when things were moving on to page one and we knew people were actually reading. It wasn't worth our time to create custom graphics and do all this stuff. Nobody was ever going to read the blog, right? So we cut out some steps to move faster. And then we went back and did those steps later when we saw traction in certain spots. The other piece that I think our efforts and how they changed, like early on, we had some personas in mind that we thought would really work. People who are onboarding new employees, they'll create guides using Scribe, and they do. Same thing, sales operations. We knew that people in sales operations should use this tool, but then writing about these personas wasn't really converting people. And we were kind of fighting battles with a lot of different tools that like intersected with those categories. So once we did that for a couple months, and then like kind of our second wave of content was way more product focused and problem focused. Again, like, all right, work construction software, all things like this, a lot of SOP related content. That's the stuff that one, we got a lot of traction with. It was lower difficulty and like it was just some low hanging fruit, but also it connected to our tool a little bit more. And when people were reading like an onboarding blog or a work instructions blog, for instance, they were converting or in the problem-based stuff, that work instructions blog 3, 4, 5 times more often. So for every visitor we got, we were getting a lot more on the actual like business side. So if we're looking at traffic, not all traffic was created equal for us, certainly. And so that just shifted my strategy over, the 9 months or so that we were running that blog strategy.
Based on what you've shared, my biggest takeaway is that nothing moves, especially as far as SEO is concerned, until you get your hands dirty. So a lot of times SEOs, we want everything to be ready-made before you publish. But I think when you publish on the go, like you could actually learn a lot of things about what you are doing right and what you are not doing right, like what Google actually wants and what Google doesn't want. But if you take like maybe a week or a month before you publish one blog post, it will be difficult for you to actually learn from the results to see if what you are doing is right or wrong. But if you are publishing frequently, I think it has a lot of upsides whereby you can know, okay, this is the type of content that Google wants to rank. And when it starts ranking, you can apply the learnings from that content piece to other content pieces that are not ranked. So another question that I have here. So you shared how your SEO strategy at Scribe, how you got started and how it took you a while before you started publishing and how you were publishing in large volume. So I would like to know, with what you did at Stripe, what will you say are some specific business results that you're able to achieve through your SEO efforts?
Yeah, 100%. This is the beauty here, kind of one of the big changes in my career from G2, where we had a lot of traffic, but it was really hard to show the value. And Scribe, where we were really able to show exactly how, this is the beauty of this tool and good tracking, but we could see people convert day of from a blog into a free user of our tool. And beyond that, you can see we had data, we were using Mixpanel, but we could see which blogs converted users, but also converted, active users and long-term users. So some different topics would convert a lot of people and then they would test the tool for a day and never come back. And so those were, would inflate our signup numbers, but they would never turn into the healthy users that we wanted long-term. Other blogs might have fewer signups, but those people came back every day and they used it for the rest of their career. So it was both users and then this active user, kind of criteria that we set up. And then the other side is we wanted both free users really open up the top of the funnel so we can just get people into the tool and it has kind of a viral component to it because you're creating a guide and sending it to your teammates and then they're downloading the tool and all this stuff. So free users are good for Scribe, but at the end of the day, it's still a business and growing revenue is a real thing. And so we also were able to show exactly how many pro conversions came from from both individual pieces of content and then the content strategy at large. And so what we did there, and Scribe so knew that our lifetime value, our LTV of a user was an evolving number as we got more data. We grew so quickly that we don't even know a true lifetime value there, but we can use Stripe or other tools to estimate that. But we would take that LTV number broadly across the company, and then we were starting to develop it within blog content. But we could say if every pro user is worth this much lifetime, that our blog has generated this much revenue, this month and then this quarter, and etc. And there's definitely a bunch of approximations in there, no perfect data, but basically within that first year of publishing, within 9 months, we could prove that each dollar we put into content would come back within 7 months. And it was a thing that was speeding up. And so you and your listeners will know how this will work. But if we've reached like break even at 7 months, month 8, where we're still ranking on the front page, that's still generating more revenue. So we were definitely showing that like within 2 years, every dollar we put in would be 5, 6, 7 times coming back. So for me, we run this playbook for 6 months. We proved this out really quickly. We've got a ton of traffic, ton of signups, and a decent number of pro revenue coming in you go to the CEO and say, this is what's working, she's coming back and saying, why don't we do it 3 times more? Here's 3 times, 4 times the budget, go do more because we know that this is really repeatable. It's proven out. And so that's like my biggest recommendation for anybody is really understand the business side of your company and know what a lead is worth or know what a sign up is worth, know what that pro conversion is and be able to prove that back to your content, right? So nobody was questioning, were we making the right choices for keywords? Were we doing the right work? Because we were bringing real dollars into the business, within 6 months.
Wow, that's really impressive. A lot of startups don't want to invest in SEO because they feel that SEO doesn't drive business results. So, like you could drive thousands of organic traffic, but if that doesn't translate into results for your business, it doesn't anything. So, another question I have here, like just based on what you've just shared now, you talked about how you should prove the ROI of your content marketing and SEO program. So can you like maybe talk more about that, about ROI, how you can prove the ROI of your SEO program much more effectively, maybe as a SaaS founder or as a first marketing hire in a startup?
Sure. I think there's a couple components that go into that type of number. And so one, these are harder to weigh in and you'll build into your model in different ways. So there's like my salary and my employee salary, and that's harder to figure out because we're doing a ton of different things beyond just blog. But if we're just looking at the blog, so you'll have to take some of that salary potentially in. But what we were able to say is, we tracked how much every single article cost across all of our different freelance writers, and what was written. And so we've got that bucket. Let's just say it's like $10,000 a month, right? So we're putting $10,000 in each month. We're getting this many pieces of content or whatever. And on day one, you won't have revenue from that. So it's like, it looks really bad ROI wise. But when you start to move out, say like our average LTV is $1,000, just to make some really easy math. But yeah, the lifetime value of a pro user is $1,000. So it means we need like for each month of content that we put in, we'll need 10 pro signups from that month of content all time just to break even. So what we were seeing is, if we do this math, sorry, I need to translate. So I'm not like giving away too much of their proprietary, but we were seeing 30 signups, pro signups, and $1,000 each. So we were generating $30,000 a month within 6 months. And that's 3 times what we've been putting in. And so, slowly you would see this like revenue from content growing much faster than that rate of the content that we're putting in. And we know that you can kind of drag the spreadsheet is like in month 2, we only have 1,000 visitors. Month 3, 10,000. We can kind of project out using some like traffic estimates and some growth of like each piece of content over time to show that this traffic will continue to grow for the next 6 months, a year, even if we stop doing stuff right now. So that means we can drag signups, will continue to grow, revenue will continue to grow, even if we stop putting money in. And so that's the beauty of doing organic content when it's working, is that once you make that investment and you've proven that it turns from a visitor to revenue, however you prove that as a business, that revenue will go for a long time, even if you leave it alone. And so it becomes this nice moat, like Scribe, I love, you can have Lauren Lee never publish another thing, and this will continue to make tens of thousands of dollars every month for Scribe, and it's already broken even. So it's just printing money for Scribe at this point. So yeah, it's a matter of how much are you investing in the content up front? How much revenue are you returning each month? And then you'll definitely see a big gulf between those early on as you invest a ton upfront. When there's not much revenue, as things are ranking and indexing and all that stuff. But once you've proven that repeatability, then you can, I don't know, those two lines on the graph in my hands are not exactly how you want to look at this, but those will kind of cross over time as the revenue line goes much steeper and your costs, remain flat or steady.
Appreciate you for sharing that, because a lot of startups find it difficult to prove the ROI of their SEO efforts, and maybe that's why some companies or some CEOs don't want to invest in SEO. So talking about one thing that you've mentioned consistently, like, is about choosing the right keywords. And I believe choosing the right keywords is one of the ways to get the best results from SEO. So can you briefly share your process for choosing keywords at Scribe? What tools were you using? How did you approach choosing keywords for Scribe?
Yeah, I'm an Ahrefs person, but you can use SEMrush or Moz or whatever else. I think getting started looking, like, it depends on what stage of company, that same question of, are you a marketing automation tool where a ton of that research is already been done? There's a ton of volume and known volume. No, you can look at all of your competitors and just run their sites and blogs through Ahrefs and grab topics. Or are you Scribe where we don't have our most on the nose competitor had no content when we started. So I couldn't run that same playbook. And so then you're trying to understand where else do you go? So if you're in that newer space, and I would still recommend this, even if you're in an existing space and just trying to find way in, there's a couple things you can look at non-direct competitors, but start to solve, like look for the problems that your company, your product, whatever is solving and look at who is ranking for those keywords, then look at their content libraries on Ahrefs. You'll get some nice ideas that you might not have seen from your direct competitors. So I call these like our content competitors here. The other thing to do, I just mentioned, like, what are the problems you're solving? Some of this is you early on, you kind of have to guess, you know what your product is, you assume how people use it. So you'll have to take your best educated guesses and just run those through. We solve this. So what is that? How do you do this process? What pain are you solving? Worry about those things. The thing that we did that was awesome a little bit later at Scribe when we'd gotten some users. And so you need some users to run this type of playbook, but go to them, either have one-on-one conversations and ask them, what they're using it for, what pain they're solving, et cetera. But we ran a great survey one with, I don't know, 100 or so people. And it was the best thing ever for a content marketer. What were you using before Scribe? Well, I was using Google Docs. And so we would never have thought of Google Docs as like an alternative. So but we found out, let's do Google Docs alternatives. And a lot of people would be writing step-by-step guides in those. We could position Scribe as a competitor there, even though it really is not a competitor. What would you do if Scribe didn't exist anymore? And you could see what they would change to. So you would say alternatives to those things, like, what are you using Scribe for? Well, I'm using it for this, this, and this. And so we knew about standard operating procedures. We knew about the term job aids, but people had all sorts of names for these documents and even different use cases that we had never thought of. And so we could take those use cases and run those terms through Ahrefs. And you can use that directionally. Sometimes we would write about things that didn't appear to have much volume, 10 volume, 30 volume, whatever. And we would see hundreds of people a month actually coming to those blog posts because we knew 3 or 4 customers are saying this. Maybe the SEO tool is wrong, right? Or maybe there's like a few different terms that are kind of rolling up and the data just doesn't look quite right. So we used anecdotal pieces of feedback from our customers, kind of cross matched with the SEO data and chose those best things. But that's how we pick keywords. And then the other piece is like, there's some specific keyword strings at SaaS companies. We have 3 or 4 or 5 that work really nicely for converting people better than others. What is an SOP? Big volume probably won't convert people as well as how to write an SOP or an SOP template, right? There's just different stages of the funnel there. So once we've got those different ideas, we're finding how to fit like SOP or job aid or whatever into these different keyword strings. So things I really like software, SOP software, job aid software. Template is really good. SOP templates, how to write, that one's really good. Looking at different competitors, alternatives for those, your company versus another one, or even 2 different companies that don't include your name and then show your name as another option versus a really good or lists, I think I mentioned. But any of those that people are really looking for a solution right now, templates, software, whatever. I am having pain at work right now, and my job would be easier if someone gave me a good tool, then be that tool and be found right there, right? So what you're looking for is a term that somebody's looking to make action right now. So that's that last step once you've kind of identified those use cases and things.
That is quite in depth and much more than what some companies might do because there is focus on just SEO tools. But from what you've mentioned, it goes beyond looking at what the SEO tools say. You also need to survey your customers, to listen to them, to let them tell you exactly why they are using your tool, the alternatives or the solutions they were using before stumbling on your tool, and what they will use if your tool does not exist. I really appreciate you for that. So, as we round up, I recently came across these gallery pages while preparing for this interview for Scribe. So, and from what I saw, it was actually driving tons of organic traffic to the website. So I want you to probably share an insight into the gallery pages that you implemented at Scribe and how it helped your SEO efforts.
Yeah, I think those you're mentioning are people using the tool, either us creating our own guides or customers creating these guides that we put into a gallery of our most popular scribes. But those are indexable, SEO driven guides of our actual tool. So we put those on the homepage and they get additional views and clicks and all that sort of stuff as people are perusing like what this tool is. But they're also generating, as you're mentioning, tens of thousands of visitors every single month on their own. One of the things that I think there it's one of these tactics or strategies that people say, and then you go look for it. And unless you have a great fit, it doesn't make sense. But it's just like programmable content. We look for strings of keywords that you would need across like any tool and that we could create kind of with AI and a little bit of programming. And so what you'll see if you look at Scribe's Ahrefs account is there's a bunch of guides on how to sign in, how to sign out, or a couple other ones. And we were actually able to, our CTO is just an absolute genius and the type of person that you give him an idea and the next morning you wake up and he's built something awesome and he just gets stuff done that blows your mind. And so he just built a little bot that could crawl these different sites and show the steps on how to sign in to a tool. And there's no competition for those. And because it's just the company and it's us, there's like no other business that would need these. And so we were able to generate a ton of traffic. It's like not our highest converting pages, but when you have 35,000 people coming to one page, some of those people are asking what this page is and why they should use it. That won't apply to many companies. There's not many Scribe competitors listening to this, but if you can think of ways to do one thing and then make it super repeatable, and especially if AI or some sort of bot can do that for you, that's a sweet spot. Like we're trying to do the same thing with templates right now. Take one SOP template and turn it into 500 long tail versions, right? Use AI to make SOPs for onboarding, SOPs for sales, SOPs for this. And I know a lot of other companies have done that. So that's that type of programmatic SEO and content that if you find the sweet spot and you understand how that fits with your tool, can be an amazing, amazing driver. You have to set up all the technical stuff correctly, but once it's running, holy cow, that can be a massive driver for your business because a lot of companies aren't doing that and it's hard to set up, but massive value.
Thank you for sharing that. So, one final question I have here is, let's say a SaaS startup founder or a first marketing hire reached out to you for advice, like they want to invest in SEO. What will you advise them to do to ensure that their SEO actually drive business results?
Definitely. The pieces that I would do is have some product market fit and know your ICP first. You want to know exactly what those problems that you're solving, and you want to know who would be a great user for the product, right? Like that's how we need to target each piece of content. Those pieces of content need to be intentional and have that purpose. On the other side, you got to invest. You have to truly invest in content. Every single blog post or whatever page that you create makes the next one easier when they're done correctly. There's a real momentum to content, especially at early stages, where the first blog for us wasn't even indexing. The second one, 10th one, still not even indexing. I had to wake up every morning and use my 10 forced indexes on Google Search Console to get things up and running. But after a month, when we had 80 pieces of content, Google knew we were publishing regularly. Everything was indexing. And then not only was it indexing, but things were starting to rank within a week or two. And now for Scribe, what's happened, you'll see the snowball effect with anybody who's running a successful blog strategy, is that Lauren will publish a piece of content and it'll be on page one within a week or two. And at G2, when we had a 90 domain, we were publishing 200 articles a month, we would publish and within an hour, that blog would be on page one, if not in the top three. And so what you'll see is if you write 5 blogs, of course they're not working. Like Google says, you need like 30 blogs, doesn't establish anyone as an expert. So if you want to be an expert in a topic, 1 blog do it? No, of course, like that's not going to show anything. 10, maybe, but usually not. And so you really need to invest 25, 50 pieces before you really start to see that traction. And at the same time, things will move a lot quicker if you have identified those correct terms up front. And then you know somebody who knows how to structure those articles, how to interlink, how to set up headers, do those little nitty gritty things that are easy to miss for someone who hasn't run this playbook before. So you need that product market fit and to know what problems your people have. You need to really invest, and then you need someone that has that knowledge, whether that's somebody in-house or who's run that playbook externally, who's going to be a partner to you and not just like an order taker. So those would be the pieces I think you need. It can be done really easily, but I think people miss one of those pieces and it falls flat and it's a lot of wasted money on content. So hopefully this helps some people make the right choices in those early stage companies.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And I believe anyone listening to this would have learned a lot from the insights that you've shared so far. Personally, my biggest takeaway, the first one is that if you want to drive business results from SEO or you want SEO to work for you, you must be ready to publish tons of content pieces. Gone are the days where you obsess over all the minute details just because you want the best article before you can publish them. Of course, you want to ensure that the quality of the articles that you publish are great. But if SEO is what you want to leverage as a way of driving traffic to your website, you should also publish tons of content faster. So if you don't publish those content pieces faster, it will be difficult for you to understand exactly what Google wants, and it will be difficult for you to know what might rank and what might not rank on the search engine. Another takeaway for me from this interview is the importance of strategically choosing your keywords. I really enjoyed how you shared the process for choosing keywords at Scribe. So it's not just about looking at SEO tools, it also involves understanding what your target audience, like their pain points and the problems that they currently face before you decide the keywords that you want to target. So those are the things that I would say are my biggest ways from this interview with you. And I believe anyone listening to this will also learn something from it. So I appreciate you once again for coming on this show, Jakub. And just one final thing. Is there anything else you like audience to know about you? And probably if they want to connect, how can they find and get in touch with you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk content, talk SEO, link building, whatever else, both whether how we partner together or just learning from each other. I usually do that on LinkedIn. So yeah, find me. It's just my full name is the URL over there where you can find me. I'll post there pretty often, though it's been slower as I've started up an ActiveCampaign and getting things running. But I would love to connect with anybody listening and share tips, whatever else, if anybody has questions. So
Okay, thank you very much. I will make sure to include your LinkedIn in the show notes and maybe other ways that our audience can find you. So I really appreciate you for your time. Thanks for coming, Jacob.